Hello viewers, welcome to K Diagnostics, Dio here. Today we have a 2013 Chevy Traverse with a 3.6 liter. The complaint on this vehicle is the check engine light remains on while the engine is running. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to confirm the customer's complaint. After confirming the complaint, we're going to connect the scan tool to the vehicle to see what kind of trouble codes we have in the engine computer. After we retrieve the trouble codes, then we're going to talk about what directions we're going to go so we can fix whatever that's causing the check engine light to remain on while the engine is running. So now let's go inside the vehicle and confirm the customer's complaint. So right there, as you can hear, the engine is running and the check engine light remained on. Let me zoom you in the dash. So right there, check engine light remains on. So customer's complaint confirmed. So now I'm gonna turn off the engine. I'm gonna turn the key back on. I'm gonna get the scan tool connected to the vehicle, and then I'll bring you guys back up so we can scan the engine computer. Alright, so I got the scan tool connected to the vehicle. So let's scan this and see what we got. So right there, the scan tool has identified the vehicle, 2013 Chevy Traverse. So we're gonna do a code scan. This is gonna scan all the control units on the vehicle. We have 3 trouble codes in the engine computer. The first one is P0449 Evaporative Emissions Vent Solenoid Control Circuit. And then the second one is 0513. And the third one is 069E, Fuel Pump Control Module, requested malfunction indication light illumination. So let's scroll down and see what other trouble codes we have in the other control units. We have 4 trouble codes in the airbag control unit, 1 trouble code in the body control unit, and on the generic side of the tool, we have this trouble code over here, again, P0449 and P069E. In this video, I'm going to focus on this P0449 trouble code first, this Evap system vent valve control circuit open trouble code, and then I will make another video about this other trouble code over here. Or maybe I can just erase this trouble code and see if it's gonna come back afterwards, because the vehicle starts. The owner of the vehicle told me that the battery was dead at some point, so I don't know if the dead battery could have caused this trouble code to be set. But since we got 2 Evap trouble codes set over here in the generic side of the tool, I'm gonna go after this Evap trouble code first, this vent solenoid circuit code, and then we're going to erase the trouble codes and drive the vehicle around to see if this fuel pump trouble code will come back. Okay, so this trouble code over here, this Evap system vent valve control circuit open trouble code, is usually caused by an open in the vent solenoid circuit or an open vent valve itself. Okay, the coil in the valve could be open, and that can cause this trouble code to be set as well. So now what I'm going to do, since we're just focusing on this code, we're going to go into the engine computer. I'm going to try to turn on this vent solenoid. These solenoids are really loud, so when I turn it on, you should be able to hear it. So right over here, Evap vent solenoid valve. So I'm going to try to turn it on and let's see what happens. Let's go to on, off, on, off. So I don't hear it, okay? So we could just have an open fuse, okay, that sends power to the vent solenoid, or we can have a open in the wiring or a defective vent valve itself. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to go under the vehicle and get to the vent solenoid electrical connector and do some tests there. We have to make sure that the vent solenoid is receiving power and control from the computer to turn it on, okay? And this solenoid is normally open, so when the computer sends ground to it, it closes it. So I'm gonna clear the trouble codes. Let's see if there will be any trouble code that's gonna come back. Let's scan it again. Only this vent solenoid trouble code is coming back, okay? P0449. So this is a hard fault. So this fault is present as we're speaking. Let me back out. Let me clear codes out of all these modules. Just once again, let's watch. And then we're gonna scan the engine computer once again to see what trouble codes will come back. If only the vent solenoid trouble code keeps coming back, we're gonna go after that one, like I said, and then we will test drive the vehicle after we fix that code to see if that fuel pump control unit trouble code is gonna come back, okay? So right there, the scan tool has erased all the codes out of these control units. So now, let's go back into the engine computer. Let's read the codes. Let's go to code display, trouble codes. So right there, P0449 trouble code is still in the engine computer. So evaporative emissions evap vent solenoid control circuit. So there is something wrong in the vent solenoid circuit. Okay, so now let's go outside, let's go under the vehicle and test the evap vent solenoid circuit. So we are here under the vehicle. Here is the fuel tank. So the vent solenoid on this vehicle is on top of the fuel tank, and this electrical connector over here has the wires for the vent solenoid and the fuel pump and the fuel level sensor. So let's check the scan tool one more time so we can know what wires we're gonna test. So let's go to guided component test. Let's go to engine. Let's go to evap system. So we're gonna test the vent solenoid. Let's go to component information. So the vent solenoid is a 2-wire valve. There's the white wire. So white wire is vent solenoid control, and the positive wire, so voltage positive, is red and white. So we're gonna test the white wire and the red and white. So these two wires over here are the wires for the vent solenoid. Now, we don't want to read about the vent solenoid. We know how it works. So it's an on and off valve. It's a normally open valve. The computer closes it whenever it needs to, okay? Whenever it wants to test the evap system, it closes it to see how long vacuum is going to stay in the evap system for testing the system, okay? So now let's back probe this white wire and the red and white tracer wire. So here is our electrical connector that has all the wires we need. Now we have one white wire here. This one here is red and white. We have a brown wire. We have a brown and a gray wire and a green wire and a blue wire. So I believe our vent solenoid wires are these two wires. So I'm going to back probe these two wires. So we're gonna back probe that one, and then I'm gonna back probe the white wire also. So let's back probe. So right there. So we back probed the red wire with the white tracer and the white wire. So now I'm going to use a test light. I'm gonna put a test light between these two back probing tools, and then we're gonna turn on the vent solenoid. We're gonna close it with the scan tool to see if we have power and ground going to the vent solenoid. If the test light lights, that will tell me that the vent solenoid circuit is good, especially around this point over here, from this connector up to the computer, the circuit is good if our test light lights. Okay, so now let's grab our test light. So here's our test light. So I connected my test light to the vent solenoid circuit. So now let's turn on the vent solenoid. So let's back out. So let's go back to our scan tool. Let's back out of here. Now we have our test light connected. We have our test light connected in the vent solenoid circuit. So I'm going to clear the code and let's see if the code is now going to come back again. So let's read the code. If the code doesn't come back, so right there, as you can see, the code is no longer coming back because now there is a path to ground. Okay, our circuit is now completed. Okay, let me back out. Let's go back to codes. As you can see now, our trouble code is no longer coming back, right? So I'm gonna disconnect the test light. Once I disconnect this test light, our trouble code will be set again. So I got this test light disconnected, so watch this. So let's go to trouble codes. Right there, our trouble code came back. I'm gonna back out. So let's clear the code. So let's read the code again. As you can see, our trouble code is now being set. Okay, so that tells me that our vent solenoid is open. Okay, so let's reconnect the test light so we can erase the trouble code once again and test the circuit. So now I'm going to turn it on. So let's go to functional test. Actually, let me erase the trouble code first. Let's erase the trouble code. So now let's go to functional test. Vent solenoid. So I'm gonna turn it on. On, off. So watch that, guys. Our test light comes on, so now I'm gonna turn it off. Okay, so guys, all I'm doing here is I'm turning it on and off with the scan tool here. That's all I'm doing. Okay, so right there, it's on, off, on. Okay, so since our test light is illuminating, that tells me that the vent solenoid circuit is good. Okay, I mean, at least at this point, so it's good. So now what we have to do is we have to get to the vent solenoid, which is above the fuel tank. And since it's not clicking, I'm pretty sure our vent solenoid is open. Okay, so this is gonna need a new vent solenoid. And since after installing this test light in the vent solenoid circuit, our trouble code was able to get cleared. So that tells me that the circuit from the solenoid all the way to the computer is good. Our problem is just the open vent solenoid. Now, if you still have any questions, I'm gonna show you the vent solenoid on the wiring diagram. And after that, we're gonna have to lower the fuel tank. We're gonna lower the fuel tank a little bit so we can get access to the vent solenoid, okay? So now I'm gonna remove my test light. I'm gonna remove these back probing tools over here. Now, to remove the fuel tank, we're gonna have to undo these straps. So we're gonna undo this strap over here, and then there's another one over here. So we're gonna undo this bolt, okay? And there's a third one over here. After we undo all these straps, we're gonna put a transmission jack below the tank. We're gonna lower the tank a little bit so we can get access to the vent solenoid, okay? So I'm gonna show you the wiring diagram, okay? In case you have a question about what I just did, in case you still have a question, and after that we're gonna lower the fuel tank so we can get access to the vent solenoid. So this is gonna need a new vent solenoid. So here is our wiring diagram. This is our vent solenoid. As you can see, it says Evap canister vent solenoid valve. I highlighted the two wires that go to the vent solenoid. The yellow one over here is the white wire. So if we follow this wire, this one, if we follow it, it goes to this junction over here, and then it goes down again and all the way to the engine computer. So this over here is the control wire. This is the wire that the computer uses to control the vent solenoid. Now if we follow the other wire, I highlighted it green, and this is the red and white wire. If we follow it, it goes up here to a fuse. So this is a fuse in the instrument panel fuse block, okay? So what I did was I used the test light to bypass this vent solenoid. So I connected my test light between this white wire, the control wire, and the red and white tracer wire. So I connected my test light between these two wires, and as I connected my test light between these two wires, I erased the trouble code. I was able to erase the trouble code, but as soon as I disconnected the test light, my trouble code came back, and we had a circuit code for the vent solenoid. Now, after connecting my test light between these two wires and the trouble code went out, that told me that the circuit is good. So both wires were good. Our problem was most likely on the vent solenoid. So this solenoid over here is open internally. Now I reconnected the test light between these two wires again. I used the scan tool to command this vent solenoid on and off, and as I was turning it on, my test light was lighting. So that told me that this leg of the circuit over here is good, and the control side of this vent solenoid is good as well. So the wiring of the vent solenoid is good. The problem is an open vent solenoid, because since our test light lights every time we command the vent solenoid on, that means the wiring is good. The problem is the open in the vent solenoid itself, okay? So this vent solenoid over here has an open coil, so the winding in the vent solenoid is open. All right, so I feel confident replacing this vent solenoid. We're gonna lower the fuel tank so we can get this vent solenoid replaced. So now let's lower the fuel tank so we can get to this vent solenoid. All right guys, so I have dropped the fuel tank off camera. So I removed the fuel tank straps. So we got the tank down here. So here is our Evap canister, and this is the vent solenoid right here. So I'm going to disconnect it. I'm going to get this vent solenoid disconnected from the Evap canister. We're going to get this out so we can install the new one. Alright guys, so here comes our vent solenoid. So I got the tube disconnected on this side of the canister. So here's our vent solenoid, and I bet this solenoid is open. So let's take it to the bench so we can test it really quickly. I'm gonna show you the new one, and after that we're gonna install the new vent solenoid. Alright guys, so here is the old vent solenoid. This is the new one, and here is the GM part number. So we got this from the Chevy dealership. So we're gonna measure the resistance of the old one first, and then we're gonna compare it to the resistance of the new one. Okay? So I'm going to set our multimeter on the resistance scale. So we're gonna put it on the home scale, and we're gonna connect to the pins over here on the vent solenoid. So right there, I'm gonna turn on our multimeter. So the resistance of this vent solenoid is 20.9 ohms. That's a lot. Okay, so I hope you can see that. So 20.8 ohms. So now, so right there, 20.8 ohms. So now let's measure the resistance of the new solenoid. So let's see the resistance of this one. So this one is measuring 20.6, so 20.6 ohms. There isn't a huge difference between both of them. So now what I need to do is I kind of want to do a continuity test on the harness that's on top of the fuel tank. I want to make sure that harness on the fuel tank is good, because there isn't a huge difference of resistance between these two solenoids. Let's do a continuity test on the harness of the fuel tank, because we might have an open between the main connector here and the connector at the charcoal canister. Let's check that, and if that's good, we're gonna install our new vent solenoid. So after checking the resistance of the old solenoid and the new one, there isn't a big difference between both of them. The new one is reading about 28 ohms, and the old one is reading 20.6 ohms. So that tells me that our problem is most likely not the solenoid. So we could have an open in the wiring harness between this connector over here and the solenoid itself. So the wiring on top of the tank could be the problem. So we have to test that first and make sure that the wiring is good before we replace that solenoid. Okay, so let's do our test over here once again before we go to the wiring at the solenoid. So we know our the red wire with a white tracer is our power supply to the solenoid. Okay, and the white wire is the control wire. So I'm back probing these two wires. So my test light is connected in series. So we're gonna use our scan tool to turn on the solenoid. So let's turn this on here. Let's use the scan tool. I'll put the scan tool over here on top of the fuel tank just to make it easy for us to access it. So let's see if this light comes on. So right there, as you can see, the light is lit. So our test light is on. So I'm going to turn it off with the scan tool again. So right there, it's off. Our test light should now turn off. So as you can see, the light is off. So now we're going to do the same test. So we got power and ground over here. So now let's do the same test at the solenoid electrical connector up here. Okay, so I can't do this one-handed. I'm gonna get these wires over here on the test light connected to this connector, and then I'm gonna bring you guys back up. So I got the test light connected to the vent solenoid electrical connector. This connector is the connector that connects to the vent solenoid. As you can see, we have our white wire and our red wire with a white tracer back probed. Okay, so now I'm going to turn on our solenoid with the scan tool, and if the wiring is good, that light should light. So on, off, on, off. So I think we have found our problem, guys. So over here the light doesn't light. Why? So that's the question we have to ask ourselves. Why isn't this light turning on over here at the connector? So we most likely have an open between this connector over here and the big connector on the other side of the fuel tank. So the wiring harness on top of the tank is open. Okay, as you can see over here, our test light doesn't light. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna follow this wire, this whole harness. I'm gonna open it. Hopefully we can find where our open is, and after that I'll bring you guys back up, because if the wiring harness was good, this test light would have lit. But since it's not lighting, okay, that tells me that the wiring on top of the tank is the problem. So I'll find the open and then I'll bring you guys back up. Alright guys, so I took the wiring harness out. This is the harness that goes on top of the fuel tank. This over here is the connector for the fuel pump, and right here is the electrical connector of the vent solenoid. So I got the wires out of the wire loom. As I was going down this wire harness, the rest of the wires looked good, but guess what I found? Look over here. So here's our problem. These two wires over here were completely crusty. You see this over here? So this is the problem, guys. You see that? So I just gave a little tug on this wire and it came out. So let me do the same thing on this one so you can see. Right there. You see this crusty green stuff? So this is what was causing the vent solenoid to not work. Okay? Look at all the green stuff coming out. So this is the problem, guys. So I'm going to fix these wires. I'm gonna fix them off camera. I'm gonna get all the wiring fixed. So this vehicle doesn't need a vent solenoid. The problem was over here at the wiring. I'm gonna fix this, and after that we're gonna put everything back together. And once we reconnect everything, this will be fixed. Okay, so I'm gonna get that fixed and then I'll bring you guys back up. All right, so I want to show you the wiring repair that I did. So I used these shrink butt connectors to fix the wiring. So these shrink butt connectors are really good. They seal the wire very well. So now I'm going to tape all these wires up and put the wiring back in the wire loom, and after that I'm gonna reuse the old vent solenoid. I'm gonna reinstall the old vent solenoid, and then I'm gonna put the fuel tank back together. After I put everything back together, I'll bring you guys back up so we can verify our repair, and at that point we're gonna wrap up our video. So I'm pretty sure once we put everything back together, we should be able to hear the vent solenoid click, and our trouble code is no longer gonna come back. Okay, so I'm gonna put this back together and then I'll bring you guys back up. So this was an unusual Evap vent solenoid issue. So we got down to it. I fixed the wiring harness. As you can see, it's fixed and ready to go. I got it up on the fuel tank, and I reused the old vent solenoid. So everything is back together. So here's our wiring harness. So now I'm gonna reinstall the fuel tank. After I get the fuel tank installed, I'll bring you guys back up. So I have reinstalled the fuel tank. Everything is reconnected. So we got this connector here reconnected, so everything is back together. So I reused the old vent solenoid. So let's check our trouble codes again to see if our vent solenoid trouble code is no longer there. So here's our vent solenoid trouble code. So let's clear the code. Let's see if it's gonna come back. Let's go back to code. Right there. No codes present, so our trouble code didn't come back. So I'm gonna turn on this vent solenoid. These solenoids are pretty loud, so when I turn it on, we should be able to hear it. So listen. I don't know if you can hear the click. Now the solenoid is clicking. So our solenoid is somewhere up here. I'm gonna turn it on and off with the scan tool. So just listen to that clicking noise. I hope you heard that. Alright guys, so that's fixed. As you can see, our trouble code is no longer coming back. So we're good to go. Okay, I'm gonna lower the vehicle and then we're gonna do an evap seal test just to make sure that all the other components on the evap system are good. And after that, we're gonna wrap up this video. Okay, so let's check our trouble code once again. So no codes present. So now I'm gonna lower the vehicle and then I'll bring you guys back up. I got the vehicle off the lift, so now we're gonna verify our repair. I'm gonna turn the key on. I'm gonna bring up our scan tool here. So let's bring up the scan tool, and here is my new vent solenoid. So I reused the old one, so I'm gonna have to return this vent solenoid because I thought that this vehicle needed a vent solenoid, but it didn't need it. So I'm gonna return this vent solenoid. The problem was a defective wiring. Okay, so let's go to engine. Let's read the trouble codes again. As you can see, we got no trouble codes present, so that's good. Let's back out. So I'm gonna tell the customer that now that we have fixed the evap vent solenoid code, there could still be a problem in the evap system. We can have a stack open purge solenoid, or we can have a problem in the tubing of the evap system. So now the computer will be able to test the evap system, and if there's a problem in the evap system, the check engine light may come back with another evap code. Okay, it's not going to be the vent solenoid code, but it can be another one, because the evap vent solenoid code being in memory was preventing the computer from testing the system. Okay, so let's back out. Let's go to functional test. Let's do the evap purge seal test. So we're gonna customize this list. We're gonna select the vent solenoid, the purge, the tank pressure. So that's all. We're just gonna look at these PIDs over here. So we're gonna graph the tank pressure voltage PID. So I'm gonna start the engine. So right now, with the vent solenoid venting, our voltage on the fuel tank pressure data PID is 1.49 volts. Okay, so now I'm gonna start opening the purge solenoid. Now I'm gonna seal it. So watch that. So let's open. Okay, I heard the engine RPM change, okay, and our fuel tank pressure voltage over here is also changing. So this tells me that our purge valve is not stuck, our purge valve is working, and our fuel tank pressure sensor is also working. So our evap system is good as far as I can tell. So I'm gonna back out of here so we can wrap up this video. So we're done. This is fixed. Look at the dash. The check engine light is off. So I'm gonna leave it right over here, guys. I'm gonna turn off the engine so we can wrap up this video. I know this was a little long, and I hope you liked the video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.